This landscape is called Through the Hills to Robo. It's inspired by the drive to Robertson through the mountains. So we moved to the south coast 3 years ago, and I was exposed to more beautiful landscapes than ever before, living in a city where you really have to make an effort to get out and see beautiful landscapes, where here it's just given. So I had to explore a little bit of landscape, and it was also really difficult to try to sell portraits and nudes only. So when I experimented with fabric manipulation, stitched down to this chunky Belgian linen, I ended up with some very interesting textures, and I thought it was a good base to start abstracting my work and go a little bit less literal. So using this pre-created texture underlined on the Belgian linen helped me to focus on the abstraction. I found it was going really easily for me to draw landscapes, because I didn't have to be so accurate about drawing a tree 2 centimeters this way or 2 centimeters that way. It didn't really change much. Now, I was also told by fellow artists to try to abstract my work a little bit, and in order to do that, I figured that I can use my skills from fashion design. And I knew how to sew, and I knew how to manipulate fabrics and manipulate surface, and I used that skill to take me on this journey. That started about 3 years ago, experimenting with textures underneath the paint and cooperating the textures of the fabric with palette knife and bringing them together to create that abstract look, something unusual, something that hasn't been done before. I still haven't really seen this done before exactly the way I do it, so I thought it is something that's worth investigating and worth exploring. Now, I just really enjoy sewing anyway, and when I stitch the fabrics through the machine, I don't actually know how it's gonna turn out. I try to keep it quite loose in a way, just sort of following my intuition without thinking what the composition is going to be. So I end up with a quite random stitch work, and I thought it's a good idea to use that as a base for an abstraction. And Robertson is a beautiful tiny town in the Southern Highlands, and you drive through this beautiful, luscious fairy tale land. And every single time I had to drive, I thought, like, this is something that's really worth painting. So I based this one on my own imagination, and it's often misty, and you drive through a rainforest, so it's really lush and green, and lots of dark greens and lots of bright greens, and you also see these sort of cedars and pine trees and European trees, a mixture of everything a bit. So you can sort of see the cedars in the distance, and you can see the hills and the kind of like the meadows. And here I really started to figure out how to work the palette knife and how to work the texture underneath, where it appears to be as a ghost painting under the painting, where somewhere I allowed the fabric to come forward a bit more, where some areas they completely covered in thick oil paint. And again, you can see the lines, the sort of the patterns underneath that I'm so attracted to. And you can also see my favorite color, the aqua blue, appearing as the highlight, and the dark, deep purples and deep green.